Kim Kardashian's bum. I don't know, it doesn't matter. You know, and it doesn't matter.
But I think
Ozzy Osbourne, who just died, bless him, in his whatever that state that he was in his whole life, we'll never know. So all over the TV for hundreds of years with his idiocy and nonsense. The music, I have no idea. I couldn't give a I don't care.
At 81, Roger Waters confirms what we all suspected about Ozzy Osbourne. Just 6 weeks after the Prince of Darkness passed away from a heart attack, the Pink Floyd legend unleashed a brutal attack that has torn the rock community apart.
About Black Sabbath, I never did. I have no interest in biting the heads off chickens or whatever they do. I couldn't care less.
Waters didn't just dismiss Ozzy's music. He called his entire life's work idiocy and nonsense.
So all over the TV for hundreds of years with his idiocy and nonsense.
The attack triggered an explosive response from Jack Osbourne that challenged everything we thought we knew about respect among rock royalty. So let's get into it. July 22nd, 2025 marked the end of an era when Ozzy Osbourne's heart finally gave out at his home, surrounded by family. The man who had survived decades of abuse, alcohol addiction, and Parkinson's disease succumbed to a heart attack at age 76. His death certificate would later reveal the full extent of his health struggles. Coronary artery disease had been silently claiming his life while he continued performing until just weeks before his death. The final chapter of Ozzy's story had been written on July 5th, 2025, at Villa Park in Birmingham, his hometown and the birthplace of heavy metal. The Back to the Beginning concert was meant to be a celebration, a farewell performance with the original Black Sabbath lineup that had changed music forever.
I just want to say to you on behalf of the guys in Black Sabbath and myself, that your support over the years has made it all possible for us to live a lifestyle we live. Thank you from the bottom of our heart. I love you, we love you.
More than 40,000 fans witnessed what they knew would be history, watching their hero perform seated on a black throne, his body ravaged by Parkinson's, but his voice still commanding the stage. The tributes that followed were overwhelming. Musicians from every genre acknowledged Ozzy's influence on their careers. Metallica, who had been influenced by Black Sabbath's pioneering sound, called him the godfather of heavy metal. Younger artists who had grown up sampling his music spoke of his cultural impact beyond just the songs. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame issued statements honoring his double induction, once with Black Sabbath and again as a solo artist. Sharon Osbourne's statement announcing his death was simple but profound. It is with more sadness than mere words can convey that we have to report that our beloved Ozzy Osbourne has passed away this morning. He was with his family and surrounded by love. We ask everyone to respect our family privacy at this time. The message was signed by Sharon, Jack, Kelly, Amy, and Louis, a family that had shared their most intimate moments with the world through the Osbournes reality show. The music industry seemed to pause in recognition of what had been lost. Ozzy wasn't just a performer, he was a cultural phenomenon who had bridged multiple generations. From the teenagers who discovered Black Sabbath's dark, heavy sound in the 1970s, to the reality TV audiences who welcomed the Osbourne family into their homes in the 2000s. His influence transcended traditional musical boundaries. The mourning period for Ozzy Osbourne was supposed to be a time of reflection on his contributions to music and culture. Fans gathered in Birmingham to pay their respects, many making pilgrimages to the Black Sabbath bench that had been installed on Broad Street in 2019. Radio stations played marathon tributes featuring his greatest hits. Music publications prepared retrospective pieces celebrating his legacy and influence on rock music. No one expected that just 6 weeks after his death, one of rock's most controversial figures would launch an attack that would overshadow the tributes and create the biggest music controversy of the year. The assault would come from an unlikely source, a fellow British rock legend whose own legacy was equally complex and controversial. September 2025 brought what should have been a routine interview for Roger Waters. The 81-year-old Pink Floyd co-founder was speaking with the Independent Inc. podcast, ostensibly to discuss British politics and cultural issues. Waters had become known in recent years more for his political commentary than his music, often using interviews as platforms to express his controversial views on everything from Israel-Palestine conflicts to the Russia-Ukraine war. The conversation began predictably enough, with Waters discussing how pop culture could be used to distract people from important political issues. He was playing a character, imagining himself as someone in power trying to manipulate public attention. How can we push this to one side? I know how to do it. We'll do it with Taylor Swift or Bubblegum or Kim Kardashian's bum, he said, setting up what seemed like a typical Waters rant about celebrity culture. But then something shifted. Waters broke character and made a statement that would ignite the biggest controversy of his later career. Without warning or apparent provocation, he targeted Ozzy Osbourne, who had been dead for only 6 weeks.
Kim Kardashian's bum. I don't know, it doesn't matter. You know, and it doesn't matter.
But I think
Ozzy Osbourne, who just died, bless him, in his whatever that state that he was in his whole life, we'll never know.
The attack was stunning in its cruelty and timing. Waters wasn't just dismissing Ozzy's music. He was mocking his entire existence, referring to his condition near death and dismissing decades of artistic achievement as idiocy and nonsense. The phrase "hundreds of years" was particularly cutting, suggesting that Ozzy's cultural presence had been both excessive and worthless. The interviewers seemed caught off guard by the venom in Waters' voice when they attempted to correct him about the infamous incident involving animal heads, noting that Ozzy had bitten a bat, not a chicken. Waters' response revealed the depth of his disdain.
I have no interest in biting the heads off chickens or whatever they do. I couldn't care less.
Waters extended his attack beyond Ozzy to Black Sabbath as a whole, dismissing the entire band and their groundbreaking contribution to music. This wasn't just personal animosity toward Ozzy, it was a wholesale rejection of heavy metal as a legitimate musical form. Coming from someone whose own band had pushed musical boundaries and challenged conventional thinking, the dismissal seemed particularly hypocritical. The timing of the attack made it especially shocking. 6 weeks after someone's death is traditionally considered a period of respect, when even critics typically refrain from harsh commentary out of basic human decency. Waters' decision to launch such a vicious assault during this period suggested either complete insensitivity or deliberate malice. The interview revealed a pattern in Waters' behavior. His attack on Ozzy wasn't isolated. He had previously targeted other musicians who disagreed with his political views. His description of Radiohead's Tom York as a prick showed a willingness to attack fellow artists when they refused to align with his political positions. But the Ozzy comments crossed a line that even Waters' most controversial statements had previously avoided. This wasn't political disagreement or artistic criticism. It was a personal attack on a recently deceased musician who could no longer defend himself. The rock community, which had often overlooked Waters' controversial statements, found this assault impossible to ignore.
At least have a conversation. He's just a self-obsessed, narcissistic, drippy little prick.
Waters' language revealed something deeper than musical disagreement. The personal nature of his attacks, the cruel timing, and the dismissive tone suggested unresolved issues that went beyond artistic differences. His comments about Ozzy being all over the TV for hundreds of years hinted at possible jealousy over Ozzy's later career success, particularly his popularity through the Osbournes reality show. The interview quickly went viral, with clips spreading across social media platforms and music websites. Fans of both artists struggled to understand the motivation behind such an unprovoked attack on a recently deceased legend. Music journalists began digging into the history between Waters and Ozzy, searching for explanations for the sudden assault. What they discovered was a pattern of animosity from Waters toward Black Sabbath that stretched back to the very beginning of both bands' careers, suggesting that this attack wasn't spontaneous, but the culmination of decades of suppressed resentment. The roots of Roger Waters' hostility toward Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath stretch back more than 5 decades, to the very beginning of both bands' careers. What appeared to be a sudden, unprovoked attack was actually the culmination of a musical rivalry that had been simmering since 1970, when both groups were establishing their reputations in the British rock scene. The first documented evidence of Waters' disdain for Black Sabbath came in 1970, when he reviewed their debut single, Evil Woman, for a music publication. His assessment was devastating in its dismissiveness. Well, well, well. I'm speechless. Well, almost. You keep thinking it's going to start. You think that for the first minute, but then if you are really perceptive, you realize it isn't going to start, and that's all there is. This early review revealed Waters' fundamental misunderstanding or deliberate dismissal of what Black Sabbath was trying to achieve. While he was looking for traditional song structures in conventional development, Black Sabbath was pioneering a heavier, more atmospheric approach that would define an entire genre. His criticism suggested an inability to recognize innovation when it didn't conform to his own musical preferences. The timing of this review was significant. In 1970, both Pink Floyd and Black Sabbath were emerging from the British underground scene, but moving in completely different directions. Pink Floyd was developing their progressive, psychedelic sound that would culminate in albums like The Dark Side of the Moon, while Black Sabbath was creating the template for heavy metal with their self-titled debut album, and Paranoid. Waters' dismissal of Black Sabbath's early work revealed a broader prejudice against heavy metal as a legitimate musical form. While Pink Floyd was gaining critical acclaim for their conceptual albums and sophisticated arrangements, Black Sabbath was being dismissed by music critics as crude and unsophisticated. Waters, despite being a rock musician himself, seemed to align with the critical establishment that looked down on heavy metal. The pattern of Waters targeting fellow musicians who disagreed with him extended far beyond Black Sabbath. His attacks on Radiohead's Tom York over political issues showed a tendency to personalize professional disagreements and turn artistic differences into character assassinations. This behavior suggested that his assault on Ozzy might be part of a larger pattern of using his platform to settle scores with musicians he perceived as opponents. The irony of Waters' position was striking. Throughout the 1970s, Pink Floyd had faced their own criticism from music establishment figures who dismissed progressive rock as pretentious and self-indulgent. Yet Waters seemed incapable of extending the same understanding to heavy metal pioneers who were facing similar criticism from the same sources. Meanwhile, Ozzy Osbourne had consistently expressed admiration for Pink Floyd throughout his career. In a 2004 interview with Rolling Stone, he called Money one of his favorite rock songs. He praised the soundtrack album Obscured by Clouds and stated that Pink Floyd never made a bad album. This admiration made Waters' attack even more cruel, as it was directed at someone who had publicly respected his work. The contrast between the two musicians' approaches to their contemporaries was stark. While Ozzy celebrated other artists and acknowledged influences across genre boundaries, Waters seemed determined to diminish anyone who didn't align with his specific vision of what rock music should be. His dismissal of Black Sabbath wasn't based on musical analysis, but on fundamental prejudice against their chosen style. The geographic element of their rivalry was also significant. Both bands emerged from industrial English cities, Pink Floyd from London and Black Sabbath from Birmingham. While London musicians often received more critical attention and industry support, Birmingham bands like Black Sabbath had to work harder for recognition. Waters' dismissal reflected the broader London-centric bias of the British music industry.
I had a long email exchange with Tom York. And it was, and at the end of it, he said, "That's it, I'm giving up the music business, you finally convinced me." And he was just being sarcastic. He's a prick.
Waters' email exchange with Tom York revealed his confrontational approach to dealing with musicians who disagreed with his political positions. His willingness to share private correspondence and his interpretation of York's sarcastic responses genuine showed a troubling lack of self-awareness about how his aggressive tactics affected other artists. The pattern suggested that Waters viewed himself as a moral authority within the music industry, entitled to judge and condemn fellow musicians based on their political positions or musical choices. His attack on Ozzy represented the culmination of this mindset, the belief that his own artistic achievements gave him the right to dismiss and demean others. By 2025, this decades-long animosity had crystallized into something more personal. Waters' comments about Ozzy being all over the TV for hundreds of years, suggested resentment over Ozzy's later career success, particularly his popularity through The Osbournes reality show. While Waters had remained primarily focused on music and political commentary, Ozzy had successfully reinvented himself as a television personality, reaching new audiences and maintaining cultural relevance well into his 70s. Jack Osbourne's reaction to Roger Waters' attack was swift, brutal, and uncompromising. Within hours of the interview clips going viral, Ozzy's son took to Instagram with a response that matched Waters' cruelty with equal venom, but with the moral authority of someone defending his recently deceased father. "Hey Roger Waters, F you," Jack wrote in his Instagram stories on September 2nd. "How pathetic and out of touch you've become. The only way you seem to get attention these days is by vomiting out in the press." The opening salvo was direct and personal, attacking not just Waters' comments, but his entire approach to remaining relevant in his later years. But Jack wasn't finished. His next line revealed something that transformed the controversy from a simple dispute between musicians' families into a revelation about long-standing tensions that had previously remained private. "My father always thought you were a cunt," he continued. "Thanks for proving him right." Jack's accusation that Waters was seeking attention through controversial statements hit particularly hard because it contained an element of truth. In recent years, Waters had indeed generated more headlines for his political commentary and controversial statements than for his music. His criticism of Israel, his comments about the Russia-Ukraine war, and his attacks on fellow musicians had kept him in the news, but often for negative reasons. The controversy between Roger Waters and the Osbourne family rapidly escalated beyond a simple dispute between individual musicians into a broader examination of respect, legacy, and behavior within the rock community. As news of Waters' comments and Jack Osbourne's response spread across social media and music publications, musicians, critics, and fans began choosing sides in what became one of the most divisive controversies in recent rock history. The immediate response from the rock and metal community was overwhelmingly supportive of Ozzy Osbourne's legacy and critical of Waters' comments. Musicians who had been influenced by Black Sabbath's pioneering work spoke out about Ozzy's impact on their careers and expressed disgust at the timing and tone of Waters' attack. The criticism wasn't just about musical preferences, it was about basic human decency and respect for the recently deceased. Metallica, whose early work was heavily influenced by Black Sabbath, issued a statement calling Ozzy one of the founding fathers of heavy metal and expressing disappointment that anyone would choose to attack his memory during a time when his family and fans are still grieving. Their statement carried particular weight because of their own legendary status and their direct musical lineage from Black Sabbath's innovations. Waters' own words were being used against him as examples of his inability to engage in civil discourse with fellow musicians. His description of Tom York as a self-obsessed, narcissistic, drippy little prick was circulated widely as evidence of a pattern of personal attacks that extended far beyond his comments about Ozzy Osbourne. Music critics began examining Waters' recent statements and behavior, with many concluding that he had become more interested in generating controversy than in contributing meaningfully to musical or political discourse. Publications that had previously treated his political commentary with respect began questioning whether his provocative statements were genuine expressions of belief or calculated attempts to remain relevant in an industry that had largely moved beyond his active musical contributions. The generational divide in the response was particularly notable. Older musicians who had worked with both Pink Floyd and Black Sabbath tended to express disappointment in Waters' behavior while praising Ozzy's character and professionalism. Younger artists who had grown up listening to both bands seemed more willing to completely dismiss Waters' comments as the rantings of an out-of-touch elder. Social media platforms became battlegrounds for fans of both artists, with Ozzy supporters vastly outnumbering Waters' defenders. Pink Floyd fans found themselves in the uncomfortable position of having to distance themselves from Waters' comments while defending the band's musical legacy. The rock community's response ultimately served as a referendum on Waters' behavior and a celebration of Ozzy's legacy. While Waters found himself increasingly isolated and criticized, tributes to Ozzy continued to pour in from musicians, fans, and industry figures who wanted to ensure that his memory wasn't tainted by one bitter competitor's jealous attacks. The message from the rock community was clear. Attacking a recently deceased legend was unacceptable, regardless of personal or political disagreements, and Waters' behavior had damaged his own legacy more than it had affected Ozzy's enduring reputation as one of rock's most beloved and influential figures. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.